Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Sword Art Online episode review. This one's going to be for Season 1, Episode 22, Grand Quest. We are still on Volume 4 of the DVD sets, and still on Volume 4 of the light novel series. And wow, this is a good episode. This is definitely one of the best episodes. It's obviously the episode that's the most plot focused since like the intro episodes for this arc, and there's just some really strong scenes. Obviously the absolute highlight has to be that final scene where obviously they both find out who each other is in the real world, and that big reveal that we've known about for so many episodes finally comes out. And then you get the confrontation, I suppose, between the two in the real world. And Suga has had a lot that she's been keeping in, bottled in herself. And it all just comes out in one of the best scenes, and probably one of the best scenes in all of Sword Art Online, in my opinion, just in terms of it's a scene, and all that visually that's happening here is just two characters talking. The key visuals obviously just being kind of Kazuto's shocked reaction to this, and then the extreme emotional response from Suga to all this. But I'll talk about that more later on. There are still other good parts of this episode that are definitely worth talking about. Obviously, this episode picks up immediately after the end of last episode, where Yui has just located Asuna's player kind of signal and stuff like that. So Kirito immediately, gets super intense, goes up, tries to basically just fly up to where Asuna's signal is with Yui, and they can't break through the kind of flight limit that's been imposed on the game, of course. Otherwise, what's the point of the world tree? And just his desperation as he tries to do this, and it just won't work. And Leafa is just very confused in that, like, okay, she's known that he's been after saving someone, but she doesn't know the full details about it. She doesn't know how kind of crazy the situation is, why he would go to such lengths for this. And she's beginning to understand a little bit of it here. Obviously, like, Yui's calling her mommy, and she can clearly see it's a person that's important to Kazuto and Kirito. But she just doesn't know what the situation is here. And then what ends up happening here is that she has to kind of calm him down so he kind of doesn't hurt himself in the game. And it's this moment of kind of like, okay, all I can do from now on is try and clear the world tree. That's the only way to get up to her, and I have to do it. And that kind of leads into the scene where he basically just says, like, thank you so much, Leafa, for everything you've done up to now. But I have to do this next part on my own. I can't ask you to put so much kind of on the line to help me in this next part. But this obviously, there is a response from Asuna. She hears Yui's calls because Yui, obviously being like a navigation pixie, but a little bit more than just that, activates kind of the warning kind of signal in terms of Asuna's player ID. And so some of Yui's calls actually get through to Asuna, and she realizes that how close, I suppose, Kirito and Yui are, and they just can't quite get to her. And so it is this nice moment, just because even though Asuna's not really in this episode all that much, it is this moment where she, in her escape attempt last episode, has found the means by which Kirito, once he gets near Asuna, can actually free her. And in this moment, she basically delivers to kind of Yui and Kirito the means to free her. And that moment where you see the kind of almost like just the spirit form of Asuna as the key card comes down, and for like a second the kind of three of them, this little family that's kind of developed over the course of the series, are kind of united just through this key card, and that they know she is aware that they're here. She's dropped this card down to try and save her, and there's a sense that it could be over soon, and it's this kind of nice moment of hope just before the really intense stuff is about to happen. And what that is, of course, is Kirito's first attack on the world tree. And it's just, we enter in, and there's a few guardians there, and the fight begins. And it's just I like the design of these kind of they're robotic guardians, whereas everything else in terms of enemies we've seen in the game has been, you know, fairy type monsters like animals or just other players. And it's interesting that the kind of they're robots inside the world tree in an otherwise very naturalistic kind of place. Um, but yeah, and then just the absolute intensity at which Kirito fights in this scene is really amazing. You, it's I like this fight scene because it is purely just against like a massive amount of enemies. What it allows them to do in terms of the animation is just to show off a lot of really cool kind of finishing maneuvers from Kirito, in terms of ways that he just destroys these things. Because they're not meant to be like one enemy is super powerful, it's just that you do get overwhelmed. So you do get to see some really cool moves from Kirito as he just tears them apart. You see him like punch through one of their faces, he impales like two of them at the same time. And because it's kind of air combat, it's really interesting just to constantly get the interesting views of this world tree, which, you know, the whole fight takes place basically in this just giant cylinder thing, and all of the enemies are coming from above, and he has to get up to the top. It's a really interesting location that the fight takes place in, and just the further he goes up, the more enemies spawn in. And you can see initially when this happens, he kind of gets into that crazy battle mode where he's like, okay, more enemies. I'm not having too much trouble here. I'm just gonna have to turn it up a little bit. But then as he's kind of towards the top, as he can see the exit basically, all suddenly, you know, it's no longer just kind of up close melee enemies. It's ones with bow and arrows, ones throwing complete swords at him, and it's a really strong moment to see him just go down so close from the end and just kind of lose all confidence after that. But even in the lead up to that, what drives him onwards despite the crazy odds that are up against is just always remembering that what he's doing this for is Asuna and how she kind of gives him strength at this moment. But regardless of that, he is just one player and he can't do this on his own, and so he dies in the game. And I thought that this overall arc has done a very good job at just building up this idea that even though when you die in this game, you don't die in the real world, there is still something very intense and kind of emotional about Kirito kind of getting killed in the game at this moment. Because you know that if that countdown respawn timer counts down, he kind of like is going to have to reset a lot of things. Like the implications that his stats will go down drastically, he'll lose most of his gear, and it's just going to be more and more time, and time is kind of what he doesn't really have right now, and it's just going to cause more and more problems. He's probably going to have to be reset to Spriggan territory, and the whole journey is going to have to begin again. So they put this really kind of interesting penalty on death in the game at this point, so it doesn't quite have the same impact as the end of the SAO arc when it happened, but it still is very intense and crazy when it does happen. And yeah, even though he's kind of said his goodbyes to Leafa, told her to not, help, she comes in and is the one to save him. And it's just a cool moment in that she doesn't even attempt to fight these guardians. She knows that she on her own is no match to try and do anything to actually complete the tree. She purely goes in there to save him. And she gets him out, she revives him, and it's an interesting moment because he thanks her, but basically says never do that again. And again, it's that kind of intensity thing come out, that he's so used to SAO that if anyone took that risk for him in SAO, they would probably have gotten killed. And he just doesn't like to see that happen ever, even if it puts his life even more risk. He just doesn't like to see that happen. And so what happens from there is that basically Leafa is beginning to kind of make it more clear to Kirito how she actually is beginning to feel. The last episode set it up, and this episode makes it a little more clear that she's basically trying to get past her feelings for Kazuto by kind of pursuing Kirito a little bit more. And so she kind of makes it very obvious to him at a point, like, I care about you, that's why went to save you. And he's like, no. And he kind of stops her because he knows kind of what she's hinting at here. And at this point, he reveals to her kind of the nature of what he's actually trying to do here, and says the name of the person he's actually trying to save. He says the name Asuna, and it all comes out here. This is why they had, Sugaha specifically go to see Asuna. So just the mention of that name from him in game would spark the reveal basically here. And it is such a strong scene because basically a bomb goes off in the series. That is how impactful just him saying that one name is. That she suddenly realizes at the same time, like she realizes before he does, of course, that Kirito is Kazuto, and this new person she's kind of falling for is the person she's just been trying to get over because she realized she could never be as close to him as she wanted to. And now it's just kind of all gone wrong for her, and it's just this kind of frustration about her feelings and I suppose the people that she falls for. And the emotion immediately comes out, but despite her saying it to him, like, Kazuto, is that you? And him realizing that it's her at this moment, he doesn't have the same reaction, of course, because he isn't aware of how Sugaha in the real world feels. He has just slightly understood how Lifa has come to feel about him, and so he sort of understands the situation that's happening here, but not fully, not to the point where he's shocked when she immediately logs out and is upset. He doesn't quite get that, and so you then come out of the game and into the real world, and you have, again, what I would consider to be one of the best moments in this arc, and I think in all of SAO it is one of the most one of the most kind of powerful moments in terms of emotional stuff. The voice acting performance from, I think it's Cassandra Morris, who voices Lifa, is amazing here, because it's a couple of sentences. It's about 2-3 minute long scene, primarily her talking. Kirito doesn't get a lot of lines here, but the voice actress has to at the same time come across that she's upset, and have the fact that she's basically crying at this moment come across in the voice and the emotion in the voice, at the same time as the fact that her heart has just been broken basically at this point, and she's angry, upset, heartbroken, all at the same time. And I think it works very well, and especially the way that the dialogue is actually written for this stuff, in that it's not all extremely clear kind of sentences. Like, she's a little bit all over the place, and that she is revealing this stuff that she had kind of never wanted to really talk about. And I'll read out some of the stuff from the book here, because I think it's a really interesting kind of scene overall to analyze. She starts off with, I betrayed my own heart, I betrayed my love for you, I was going to forget, to give up, to fall in love with Kirito. In fact, I already had, and yet, and at this point he realizes, like, oh, this is what's going on. And again, he's kind of silent for most of this. He doesn't know how to react to this. And then his immediate reaction is to go, he knows himself that it's not the case, but he's going, but we're siblings. And then she reveals to him that, no, I've known for 2 years that hasn't been the case. And we are not like brother and sister. And she even says that here. We aren't real siblings. I've known for over 2 years. When you quit practicing kendo and started avoiding me years ago, it was because you learned the truth, wasn't it? You were keeping your distance because you knew I wasn't your real sister. So why have you decided to be nice to me now? This is really important, I think, this one line here, because I think it gives you a hint as to where her feelings for Kazuto developed from. In that, I'm not trying to say here that her love for Kazuto isn't real, but I think it's definitely a case of the fact that even before SAO, she kind of didn't have her cousin. She didn't have her brother because he was distant from her because of him finding out before her the reveal of the nature of his parents, and that he's not really part, I suppose, part of this family in the same way as like Sugaha is. Their mother is Sugaha's mother, not Kirito's mother. Um, and you can see, we have this from earlier on in the season. He, at this point in time, quit kendo, put even more time into video games and stuff like that, and was very distant from everyone. He didn't know how to react to this girl who, for so long, he had known as his sister, but now is revealed to be his cousin. It's this relationship that has suddenly changed, and his, being introverted and stuff like that, his way to approach that was to distance himself from her. And you can sort of see that when this happened, and then given that they were still distant from each other, and in the Silica episode even talks about that Sugaha must kind of hate him for abandoning her at Kendo and everything that happened there. There's this kind of distance between them that you could even sense even from that episode. And just this really interesting idea that she kind of, when SAO happened and he was completely gone, basically, she, learned the truth, obviously, at this point, and was kind of not like shocked in the same way Kirito was, but kind of interested in that. Like, okay, this just changes kind of what our relationship is, and she obviously cares about him because he is a member of her family. But then when he came back and started to be nice to her, she, rather than just being like, finally have my brother back, kind of suddenly kind of impressed by this kind of display of like emotion from Kirito. Maybe her feelings overdeveloped for him at this point. That her feelings, yes, they are love, and I'm not denying that, but it is more that she fundamentally didn't have her brother for so long that getting him back was, she kind of took it as a bigger thing than it actually was. And I think ultimately that is the case that happens here, that fundamentally this arc, I think, is about the repairing of the bond between brother and sister, rather than focusing super heavily on Sugaha's romantic feelings for Kirito. That plays a role because of the complex situation, but it's not the full situation. And then it continues from there. I was so happy when you came back from SAO. I was so happy when you started treating me the way you used to. I thought you finally saw me for who I was, but after this, I'd rather you kept being cold to me. Then I wouldn't have realized that I loved you. I love you. I wouldn't have been sad to learn about Asuna, and I wouldn't have fallen in love with Kirito to replace you. And she just kind of locks Kirito out of her room and is still just dealing with her emotions about what's just happened. And he just kind of slumps down outside her door and doesn't know how to react himself to this kind of outburst that has just happened. That he eventually kind of, I suppose, learns to, as we see basically in the next episode, just accept it. But it is a really strong thing that just happened suddenly. Like, when the reveal happened, I didn't quite expect him to go this far, and just have her completely just give all of her feelings out. Like, it all just comes bursting out to the surface. But she has been keeping it in, like, all season, basically, and it kind of makes sense that it would all come out like this. And again, the voice acting performance, I thought the way they animated the faces to get the emotion across was exceptional in this scene. And it is one of the more important scenes in terms of this kind of character plot. And it is done so well that I think it really brings together this arc that, yes, for a lot of people they find it hard to relate to just because of the kind of subject matter. But I think if you just talk about it in terms of just a character feeling this way, maybe not the specifics, like loving her brother sort of thing, but just the fact that she loves someone who she can never kind of close the distance to, that this person is always going to be so far away from her because he's her brother, because he's obviously, he already has this extremely strong relationship with Asuna. And, for her to just flat out admit that she is jealous of Asuna. And you sort of see just how much she's been kind of containing in and stuff like that. And again, I think some of that dialogue does hint towards the fact that, yes, those are her feelings, but fundamentally what she needs is just her brother, and she's just enjoyed having him back as her brother so much that she's maybe gone a little bit overboard. But you understand it given the crazy situation that's happened. Um, I just think this is one of the best episodes of the ALO arc overall. Again, the highlight being that final scene, but there are also some really great stuff throughout the rest of these kind of this episode and the other episodes. So, there's not a lot else I have to say. Like, obviously, there's still going to be big reactions at the start of the next episode as we get into the kind of towards the finale of this arc. But for now, that's been my thoughts on this episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the episode. Did you like that final scene as much as I did? I think is the main question. But other than that, thanks for watching the review, and bye.